Hello, my name is Keegan Bader and I intend to be a chemical engineer.
My name is Serena Villacorte and I'm a biomedical engineering intended student.
My name is Iman Hosseini. I'm majoring in computer science.
My name is Lucy Paulzine. I'm an intended paper science and engineering major. This is our proposal for an app that records accessibility of urban infrastructure. Accessibility in me.
So we're making this app for people with mobility impairments. So that can be someone with a physical disability, but it's not limited to them. Also, the elderly, they can have trouble walking around the town. They can utilize our app. So basically, what our app does, it allows the user to report a location that they find to be obstructing the flow of their day. Um, why we think this is important, historically speaking, people with disabilities, mobility impairments, their voice hasn't been heard. So this app hopes to amplify their voice, you know. And for someone with standard mobility, like a curb can just be, you wouldn't even take note of that, but to someone with a mobility impairment, it can be a complete obstruction to the flow of their day. You see, how our app works, right? So someone with a mobility impairment, they'll come into contact with something like a curb or a different form of obstruction. This app will allow them to report that location, mark it using GPS technology. It'll also require them to give it a rating on a scale of 1 to 3, 1 being the lowest, 3 being the highest, and also an optional description of the obstacle, right? So this data is going to be available to the user themselves. It'll be displayed on a map. So before they go to a location, they can kind of get an overview and get an idea of what they're getting themselves into. But also, hopefully, entities, private and government, will review our data. And this is a means to kind of guide future renovation and construction projects so they can take this community of the mobility impaired in mind, right? And make structures that everyone can use together.
Our app directly addresses the engineering grand challenge of restore and improve urban infrastructure because it will help identify where infrastructure is lacking in accessibility. This information will be used to renovate existing infrastructure to make it more accessible and bring to light what common issues people with disabilities face so that they can be addressed in future infrastructure plans. The solution also works towards the engineering grand challenge of advanced health informatics because it facilitates the acquisition of data and communicates that information to sources that can use it.
The first thing you notice looking at the visual component is its simplicity. The simplicity of having only two screens caters to people with mobility disabilities, because that population often has limited motor skills, which means an app with many buttons or pages could be a challenge for them to operate. The colors black, gray, and white are used the most to provide the most contrast to help the visually impaired, while large red buttons signify the report function and the conclusion of the app. In terms of how the app actually works, it begins with a map showing your current location. You can either choose to report the obstruction exactly at your location or select where the obstruction was using the location bar at the top, which also has a speech-to-text feature if you struggle with typing. Once you click Report Obstruction with the location selected, the user is moved to the screen to the right, in which they choose the severity of the obstruction on a scale of 1 to 3. Once choosing this, they can also choose to describe it, once again with the option of speech-to-text. Lastly, the obstruction is finally reported using the dark red report button.
With additional funding and time, there are several steps that our group can take in moving forward with this project. The first step would be to code the prototype for the app. Next, we would need to find a way to organize all the information that the app would be receiving, which would also be done by coding. Then we would need to complete real-world testing on our app to ensure that it is truly efficient and accessible for the users. Finally, we would need to ensure that altogether our design, arrangements, data, and efficiency all work together to create the best and structured app for our users. With these steps, we would be able to create an app that would best serve in helping those with mobility disabilities. This is our presentation. Thank you for your time.